Hello, welcome to this week's episode of What One Thing, One Business, One Story and One Lesson to take away in action every week for small business owners looking to grow. I'm Hayley Baxter.
Phil Davenport. And today we're joined by Angela Hodgson, whose story proves that leadership isn't just about titles, it's about who you choose to protect when everything goes wrong.
In this episode, Angela shares the moment she realised corporate cared more about products than people while she was leading a global team through riots in Barcelona.
And that was just the beginning. Burnout, grief, maternity leave, culture shock and COVID. Angela lived through more in 12 months than most leaders face in a decade.
But what came out the other side is powerful: clarity, courage, and a whole new mission to help small businesses build teams that actually work.
If you've ever wondered what it really takes to rebuild yourself, your team, and your career from the ground up, this is the episode for you. Welcome to the pod, Angela.
Thank you so much.
So before we get into your one thing, let us know, was there a challenge, a turning point, or a bit of a wake-up moment just to set the scene?
Can I have all of the above? So if I take you back, so are you sitting comfortably? In 2019, I was just returning to the corporate world. So I had had my second baby, returning after maternity leave, going back into the corporate role, thinking, oh, am I ready to go back? Yeah, right, I'm going to do this. I'm going to smash this. Had a really senior role, went back in, and within a couple of weeks, I was kind of thinking, oh, this is quite a lot. This is a little bit overwhelming. And then I thought, well, maybe it's just because, I'm used to singing nursery rhymes, not kind of, leading teams and all this kind of stuff. But then things started to happen where the culture had changed, the dynamics had changed with the team that I kind of returned back to leading, and the leadership team that I was part of had changed. There was just such a lot of change. I was finding it quite a lot. So I went on this event. It was my event. And we was in Barcelona, and this is at the time of the Barcelona riots. So there was this big freak out between Catalonia and Barcelona, and they wanted to have that state of independence. So imagine riots, fires, guns, people rioting in the street. And I had delegates stuck in the airport. I had staff that was looking at me. I had millions of pounds worth of products, and everyone saying, what are we going to do about this? And me kind of saying, this is a lot. I've got to try and fix all of this stuff for this team. So I kind of put all of these things in place, was supporting the team, but I rang back to HQ for some support and some input. And the only thing they said to me is, make sure you're doing a proper risk assessment, because you'll have to justify every decision when you return to the workplace. You need to protect the millions of pounds worth of products. And I'm kind of like, okay, well, what about the people? What about the people? And it just made me think differently about corporate, and it made me think differently about teams. What leaders are out there who are protecting the products, or are they protecting the team? What leaders are out there who feel like they can actually put themselves in those really difficult situations and take the team through those really horrible things and get them through the other side, or take the team through something really exciting and keep the energy high all the way through? So it really made me think quite differently. And I decided to leave corporate and then decided to set up my own business. So my what one thing is leaving corporate, setting up my own business, and then helping other business owners really, really have better belief and a better structure around performance for their teams.
So I'm going to delve into that a little bit more, because it feels like the pivotal shift for you was that big corporate kind of cared more about the products than the people. Was that what pushed you, or was it the overwhelm of the situation or the isolation? Because that's a real huge moment, isn't it? But just being in the middle of the riots is a huge moment. Mm-hmm. And then being in the middle of riots in a foreign country with a product, with people who are looking to rely on you, you've suddenly gone from, and I don't mean this in a derogatory kind of way, but from being like, a Sainsbury's manager where you've got a team of people and how's the supermarket doing, etc., to not quite in a war zone, but in a very, very volatile situation in a foreign country. Mm-hmm. What was the real spark that made you say, I'm not prepared to do this? What was the one piece that you really thought, this isn't for me?
It was the thing on the people, because as I said, I returned after maternity leave, and I'd worked in that department. I'd led that department for 6 years, I think, before I went on maternity leave, and I built up an amazing team. It was quite a broken team to start off with. It wasn't really performing, lots of conflicts and things. And over that 6-year period, I built up this amazing, high-performing, incredible team. That's not what I returned to. So the team was already having dynamic issues, having issues with performance, having issues in terms of not quite understanding the direction or the things that they were trying to achieve. And then when you take them out of the HQ, when you take them into this foreign environment with this war zone that's happening around you, I think it was about 3 weeks after I came back from maternity leave, it was a lot. because at the time I'd been out of the business. I had maternity leave for 15 months. I mean, you have those incredible benefits in corporate. I had the 12-month maternity and plus my extended leave with my holidays. They didn't necessarily have the trust in me, the belief in me, the understanding of me, because they'd forgot what it was like to be led by me. So I never left that viewpoint of protecting the team and supporting the team. And it made me really strongly, firmly believe in that again, in that zone of kind of, terrorists and all of that, those things that were happening. And I wanted to quickly build the belief in me again as a leader. I wanted them to look up to me and know, do you know what? I don't know what to do here, but I know I'll look at Angela and she will sort this. It's not how I felt inside. I was like, I don't know what to do here. However, that's how I wanted my team to believe and trust in me.
So what did you do next? What were the steps you took once you'd had that realisation?
So the steps I took was to be completely honest with the team around, okay, so this is what's happening and this is what we're going to do. So I looked at very clear roles and responsibilities for people. I had somebody who was literally looking on social media because we found there was a group on social media. There was a Spanish-speaking person in my team. And there was a local group who were actually publicising where they were going to be rioting because they were trying to get more and more people to go. So I had somebody on social media, I had somebody who was looking at all the airports and transport and logistics. So I set very clear roles and responsibilities and I gave everybody a very clear purpose. We're going to be here for 2 weeks. We've got hundreds and hundreds of delegates from all over the world who are here. We will get through this together. So I gave them very clear roles, very clear purpose, and very clear belief. So when they were upset or worried, because they were really worried because they were literally rioting outside our hotel, I made it that they felt protected, that as much as I could possibly protect them, I did. So I moved them from different areas in one part of the hotel to another part of the hotel that was safer and things like that. Contacted HQ, contacted the retailers where these delegates are coming in from. So made sure communication was strong, roles and responsibilities were clear, energy was high, trust was high, and still trying to keep the fun, even though all of that was literally happening outside the hotel. So actually, on reflection, there's a lot that I did, which is probably why inside I was like, this is really tricky.
Inside and outside, that was really tricky. But what resonated with me was that you left the team and you came back 15 months later to a completely different landscape. Mm-hmm. So it feels like, and I might be putting words into your mouth, that you were almost starting from scratch. Mm-hmm. And then when you were put into a high pressure environment, you realised that you were starting from scratch and maybe you didn't want to start from scratch under somebody else's values. Mm-hmm. So you've had that decision. You've probably come back from Spain now. What was the next step that you did to push forward with your change, if you will?
So there's a little bit of a diversion just to add on to the story so that you understand the bigger picture. So when I returned back from Spain, I actually was having quite a lot of personal problems. One of my friends, she went to bed at age 35, didn't wake up, she died. She had something wrong with the heart. So that had happened. One of my brothers was in another war zone, an actual war zone. He's a soldier and he went missing. We didn't know where he was and we thought that he could have died. I've got 2 children with ADHD, so there was a lot of problems with that. And then COVID hit. So that was just a little bit of a whistle-stop tour of some other broader context that was happening around this time. And I actually experienced a significant burnout and a bit of a breakdown. And I really, really, really struggled to cope. So this was kind of like 6 months after I'd returned from maternity leave that all of that stuff had happened. So I actually went off for 6 weeks with this kind of burnout, couldn't get out of bed, couldn't talk. I was in a really, really, really bad place. Was then furloughed for 8 weeks as part of COVID. And during that time, I kind of just coming out of that burnout piece and just seeing the wood for the trees and reevaluating my whole life. Back to basics. What is my core values? What do I want to do for my family, for me? What do I want to achieve? And what is my actual purpose? What's my purpose in my career and in my life? And through all of that, I decided it's not corporate because that's actually not aligning with my values anymore. It's not aligning with the direction I want to go in or my family. So I made the decision to leave. And the day that I returned, they announced voluntary redundancies. So we were talking about serendipity earlier. It was serendipity. I was decided to leave. And then it was like, oh, you're going to get this package of money that's going to support you with that transition. I was like, oh, it couldn't be better. So
we've had the serendipity. We've had the voluntary redundancy. I mean, I think one thing is probably that this whole burnout, and because we all experience it, don't we? We've all been through major, minor. You've obviously been through some major traumatic events there that have triggered you into the decisions you were about to make. You've left corporate, as a lot of people do. You've got a bit of backing of some money, which is nice because you've had the redundancy and stuff. How do you now go about creating your new future? What was your next step to make things happen?
So luckily, before I joined Bentley, I'd already had my own business, and I did that for I think about 5 or 6 years, and then had my first baby. There's always a baby involved, so I had my first baby. I thought that was quite hard work, and then got headhunted, went to Bentley for 9 years. So it was a natural space to go back into because I'd already had that 6 years prior experience. I'd worked with SMEs before I'd gone into corporate. So I'm very enthused by SMEs and about innovation and that drive and that passion and that newness, and about the quickness of SMEs is something that's always excited me when you've come from, the corporate world of many, many, many layers of hierarchy. So I knew I wanted to set my own business back up. It was dormant on Companies House, so I could quickly kind of switch that over. But I thought, actually, I'm quite ingrained now in corporate. I'm ingrained in corporate language, put a pin in it. Let's, quick wins, low hanging fruit, all this crap that I used to spout out all the time and, talk. It's not how SMEs talk. My connections that I had prior to Bentley, I hadn't maintained over that 9-year period. So I was kind of starting from scratch. The world had changed. We're in the midst of COVID. So I decided to take a government contract, which was on a program working with SMEs. So that kind of got me back into that in a bit of a safer space because it was government led. It was quite an aspirational program I was part of. So it was building my credibility in the SME space. And then I very quickly started partnering with universities. So I partner with Leeds Business School, Manchester Met, and also Salford University. And I deliver programs for them for their SME community. And I also now partner with other organisations who do similar things to me. So we kind of work in partnership, refer other clients to each other, support each other through that. So it's been a bit of a journey of building connections and partnerships and collaborating with the right organisations to really build my credibility. So that's what helped me then transition into that world of re-owning my business, establishing the business and building more credibility with that SME space.
And if there was a business owner listening to this episode today who's in a similar spot to you were, which I hesitated in saying that because I think you actually have been through, it sounds an absolute awful time to get in it, and absolutely amazing that you come out of that the other side and do all of the amazing things that you do, because I think there were probably people that wouldn't have been able to overcome those challenges. But if there's somebody sat there feeling like they're in that position where working in that corporate world is not aligning with their values, what advice would you give to them? And what steps would you recommend they take to start the journey?
Well, it's interesting because when I was talking about partnerships before, I've joined an online community recently. So I'm part of this group with 65 female entrepreneurs who all own their own business. And I'd probably say about half of them are in that transitional state between they're either from corporate or they've got an actual job and they're trying to build their own business. So there's quite a lot of people who are actually in the space that you're talking about where they're trying to make that change. But it's quite a big, brave pill to swallow. It is a big, brave pill because you've got to have inner belief in that. So the starting point that I'd recommend to them is, first of all, speak to your partner if you have one. I spoke to my husband before I left Bentley, and I was the breadwinner, and kind of said, I can't do this anymore. And his response was, whatever you need to do to make you happy will make the family happy. Leave. But not everybody has that support system around you. And it is tough owning your own business. So if you don't have that support from the outset, the transition will be hard. So speak to your partner, family, friends first. The second thing is then really think about what is it that you want to niche in, because everybody has a specialism. Everybody has something that they're incredible at. They just don't necessarily see themselves in that way. So what's the one thing, coming back to your podcast name, what's the one thing that people refer to you as? What are you known as in your corporate role or in your current position that you think, do you know what? Everybody refers to me as the finance person, the marketing person, the purchase person. Like, everybody says I'm great in building supplier relationships. Whatever that one thing is, that's your niche. That's what you really need to build your credibility on. The key step I would take is building your visibility. Try to get onto podcast, go on try to write magazine articles, start on your social media presence. Because if you don't have visibility, actually getting clients can be quite difficult. And if you've given up your job and you have no income, your partner might have been really, nice at the beginning, but if you've got no income, it possibly might not be, and you possibly might be in stress mode. So just do a little bit of prep beforehand.
I think that's a really good point. I think even today, it's really worth building up your LinkedIn presence, connecting with people, having conversations. I must admit, I've not really joined any business groups on Facebook, or I've got a few kind of Facebook buddies from business though, and talking to them. And I know a lot of people in the corporate world that just touch base with me and we have a little chat. And I think setting up that, because once you've set a website, I think you've probably maybe even breached your contract, haven't you?
Mm-hmm.
But the first step to make yourself a bit of an expert or to start producing that content is something that everybody could be doing and will help you out if you decide to jump or whether you decide to stay in corporate, because it's never a bad thing to be seen more visibly by other industries and by people in your own business as an expert.
And I do think that is an ongoing challenge of running a business, because you have to start with that visibility, but then you have to keep it flowing all the way through, don't you? The other thing that I also think when you were talking then, the thought that came to me about niching is I sometimes find with business owners and clients that I work with, sometimes they're afraid of making a mistake because they're like, well, what if that's wrong? What if that's not what I actually really want to do or what I end up being good at? And I think that the thing that I would add to it is it's always a journey, and you can change if you go down a road and it's not quite right, because you get to decide. That's the beauty. It is hard running a business, but the good side of it is you get to decide what you do and who you work with. And I think just trying different things in different ways is a good, you don't have to get it right from the very, very, very beginning.
I think it's a really good point, and it's something that I went through the same thought process myself of, well, two thought processes actually from what you've just said. One was, how can I niche down? I've got so much knowledge, was one. And you're like, yeah, I mean, everybody has so much knowledge, but it's the blend of that knowledge that actually gives you the value. But what's that one thing? Because if you aren't known for that one thing, what are they knowing you for? I was literally just before this call having a conversation with somebody who is a coach, and all of their stuff on their LinkedIn is all about being a coach. I'm a coach. I'm a coach. A coach of what? Because everybody can coach on different things, but of what particular topic? You know, the person who runs the program that I'm part of, she runs it all on passive income. So her whole thing is passive income. So if you think of passive income, you think of her name. She's called Lisa Johnson. So you want to be the go-to person of that niche, because if you're not the go-to person and you're one of many, how are you standing out? But the other side of that is then around, and the other fear factor I had of the niching is, oh, well, what if, you know, the clients that I could potentially work with, I can work with any industry, I can work with anybody, I can do anything. But then again, how are you becoming known? So what I've really done is I've really focused in my messaging on LinkedIn, building my following, building my connections. But they weren't connected with me 3 months ago. So if I said something 3 months ago and I'm now not doing that thing, the likelihood of them skimming right the way through 3, 6, 12 months ago of content is slim to none. So you can pivot because your audience kind of changes and refines. And some people might not want to connect with you, but they're not your client. That's fine. There's no point investing time in trying to nurture that.
Is there anything you'd do differently?
Good question. What would I do differently? What I would do differently, actually, is this program that I'm part of, which is all about building semi-passive income and semi-passive and passive income streams. I would have started that journey earlier, because what I do currently is executive coaching and I do consultancy, but that is a one-to-one relationship. So you're working with that one client, or you're working with the leadership team of a client, or a team in a client if you're doing the consultancy side. But there's so much untapped opportunity in terms of semi-passive or passive. So I'm now looking at products that are downloadable, that you'll pay a small investment for and you'll get the downloadable products. I'm looking at online courses that I will deliver, which will be a semi-passive income. So it'll be a lot of upfront effort and energy to create it. But then once it's created, I can just maximize that and just keep repeating that course and getting more and more people into my pipeline and my funnel. So still doing what I'm doing, but then doing these other things on top. So if you always rely on, it's called trading time for money. If you always rely on trying to have a one-to-one relationship with clients, if you lose that client, you're at risk. If you've got multiple pots of income or multiple pots of revenue, then you've got less risk.
I love it. I'm just trying to think how we summarize this, Angela. I mean, you've been through such a life-changing experience, clearly. I mean, we've got, I think, taking time away from the corporate and then coming back in and starting again gave you a great opportunity to reflect. And I think in your case, you had that, I wouldn't call it a catastrophic moment, but you had that cataclysmic moment of being involved in the riots, of phoning up for support and realizing that even though you're in a huge corporate, you're also on your own and having to take that responsibility. I think that although that's a huge kind of picture thing, I think that a lot of people in the corporate environment experience this quite regularly, and maybe don't take that decision to jump because it's maybe not been so, I can't remember the clever word you guys use for it, where things serendipitous into, I'm not sure that it's always so serendipitous, but I think what people can do is take inspiration from that on their own journey and then cheat the system a little bit by maybe, as you say, getting involved in these Facebook groups, getting involved with LinkedIn, and starting to use your story as a blueprint to how they're going to move forward. And I'm, too, a massive, massive fan and an advocate of joining a peer group, even though it seems expensive at first, and even though you don't want to waste the money, and everybody, especially coming from corporate, you're used to counting the pennies and making sure there's value. There is value from having people who are in your foxhole with you and backing you, and also helping you with that blueprint. And that brings us beautifully on, I believe, Angela, to what I like to call the shameless plug. Please let us know who is your ideal client. And if they've listened to this and thought, you know what, I would love to work with Angela, how do they get in touch?
Okay. So my ideal client is a business owner or leader who looks behind them in their leadership team and they think, I've got all of these ideas, I want to do all these amazing things, but I look left and right and I don't really see anyone side shoulder to shoulder with me. I don't really see anybody who's kind of like, yes, let's do this thing, or they're not energized, or everyone's going off in completely different directions. My ideal client is you've got an idea and you want to drive something forward, but your team are not performing. And by not performing, I don't mean that they're rubbish and they can't be bothered and they're sat there slumped on the desk or they're disappearing. I don't mean that. They're still trying hard. It's just the ways of working are just not helping. So looking at how to improve and simplify your ways of working to re-energize your team and deliver absolute business results. That's my ideal client.
And where can people connect with you?
So the primary platform that I use is LinkedIn. So it's LinkedIn/in/Angela Hodgson, and it's HODGSON. I'll send the links for the show notes so you can just click on that and it'll be easy to access me. I do shamelessly plug. So to do that, I do between 5 and 6 posts per week. I've always got an interesting poll on a Sunday. There's lots of different content around teams, burnout, strategy, really practical stuff, and also some really silly stuff. The latest one was a picture of me in the bath. So if you want to see that, then head over to my LinkedIn page. But for an actual shameless plug, I do actually have a little freebie gift for the listeners. So this freebie gift is, if you go on to my landing page, again, I'll share the link for the show notes, you'll be able to just do a quick assessment of your team's performance. So it's a 5-minute quiz, and at the end of that quiz, it will give you a result, and you'll also get a free peak performance playbook, which will help you with really practical tips for assessing what might be the problem as to why your team aren't performing, and really quick tips of what to fix. So I really recommend having a little look at that, because hopefully there's something in there where you think, do you know what, actually, it's a really good idea I haven't thought of. I'm going to put that into place. Let's make a difference together.
That's really super, Angela. Thank you for sharing that. And we'll make sure that all the links are in the show notes, as you've said, in the description. And I think that just leaves us to say thank you so much for joining us and sharing your story and your one thing.
Thank you so much.
An incredible story from Angela, going from a catastrophic event to success. What was your big takeaway from that, Hayley?
So, as always, I've got 2 big takeaways. So the first one is that it just goes to show how much people can actually go through and still come out the other side and, go on to do great things. The second thing is that Angela talked a lot around the things that she did, and we laughed a little bit about serendipity and things like that. And sometimes that isn't always the way it goes, and it can feel like more of an uphill battle. But I think the big thing to take away for me is that doesn't matter if inside it's the right thing for you to do. And I think it's better to take that leap than stay in that world where you're not really happy and it doesn't really align with you, and you're just a number in a machine, and all of the things that people talk about.
I often think of myself as not having really come from corporate. I came from more kind of small businessy environments. I think that the real piece that I took from it was that the thing that I could have done prior to launching my own ship was to get more active on LinkedIn, to get more active inside Facebook business groups, to start making connections, maybe even to, chuck £100 at going to an event at a weekend to go and see other small business owners. And I think the big fear you have of doing that is thinking that you'll be almost a fraud in the group, or but actually there's lots of people like Angela and many business coaches that we meet that love to meet somebody who's just starting that journey and to give that advice and be able to say, look, here's the things that I did that I didn't do correctly. And when you sat around that table with 10 other business owners saying, look, I fancy doing this, maybe a year's time, they give you such great ideas and input. And then if you can keep those relationships alive, when you do launch a ship, you've got so many more options available to you and so many more people that might either refer you or potentially actually be your customer.
Yeah, that's actually a really great point, because a lot, again, I don't know, I didn't do it that way. I just left in a bad mood about everything and didn't know what to do in life. But I think if you're of the mindset that that's kind of where you want to go, absolutely starting to do things in that way and delve into that world would be a really great thing to do. And it's an easy thing to do. It takes a little bit of time and not a great amount of money. And as we all know, building businesses is all about connections and conversations, really. When you cut out a lot of the other stuff, really that's what it comes down to.
I think even more so than that, even if you don't decide to take the plunge, even if you don't decide to take a dip, you've learned about it, you've understood the risks, the challenges, the possibilities, and just building up your social media presence. I think in this day and age, I mean, I'm terrible, I'm an old man now. I've not got a TikTok, I've not got an Instagram. But had I been starting off, if I was in my mid-20s, I'd be thinking, okay, let's start to build this now. And imagine if you'd been doing that for 10 years, the amount of followers and connections and everything. When you launch your business, you're already at that step. Whereas for a lot of us as business owners, we launch our business and then we start to build our LinkedIn connections and we start to build our brand. And when you first start in a business, the brand is you. So you should already have made those videos, put yourself about, got involved.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think that is a great takeaway and a great action point that's easy for anybody listening to do. Thank you so much for joining us. We hope you found one thing to help move your business forward.
And if you did, please do us a favour, share this episode with someone else who's on the same journey, and we'll see you next time on What One Thing.